Talking baseball, baseball and the O's.
Welcome back, Birdland, to another episode of the Talkin Orioles Baseball Podcast. I am Benny Becker, and I am thrilled to be back with you guys today, talking Orioles baseball. It's been a little bit. It's been about a week since I've come on and talked to you folks, and trust me, that will not be the norm. That is not what we want to do. We want to be on every day talking Orioles baseball with you, but certainly at least every other day, a few times a week. But last week, I need to take a step back, gang. I needed to collect my thoughts because I was going to come on here and I was going to rant and rave and I was going to say some outrageous things that personally, in hindsight, I would not have fully believed, and I wanted to get my thoughts right. Listen, this Orioles season has not necessarily begun exactly how I expected it to begin. Truly, I did not think that the Orioles would be off to this tough of a start. And one of the main reasons is because I talked about in the beginning of the season, they had this first 36 games that I felt were against very mediocre competition and teams that we could get out to a great start with. Really, the projected number that I thought we should wind up being at after the first 36 games is 24 wins to 12 losses. And I'm not going to sit here and say that we're not still technically right around that path and can get right back on that path. But it's been 5 games since we last talked. Overall, the Orioles went 3-2 in that stretch. And that's kind of been similar to, I guess, how the season really has started, gang. And I think a part of that, right, is we expected these teams that we're playing to be subpar teams. And in the schedule episode, when we broke all of this down and really talked about the teams that we were playing in the first 36, they were teams that truly you can go back and listen to. I was telling you we're going to be better than last year. And teams that were on the rise, teams like Pittsburgh, heck, Milwaukee, I think we thought was taking a step back overall with the Corbin Burns trade and some other things, but we still knew they would be a tough team. A team like Boston, you didn't necessarily expect to get out hot, even though they're a team we have talked about that I always feel like when everybody is off the Red Sox coming into a season, they tend to have a good season and outperform. And when everyone's all hyped for them, they tend to disappoint and be kind of one of the worst teams, at least into the division, if not in the American League in general, right? So some of these teams have been a surprise. The Angels came out to a decent start also. There's another team in there that I'm forgetting the Royals. The Royals are another team who, just like Pittsburgh, already has accomplished double-digit wins this season in an early stretch of time. And Pittsburgh, Kansas City especially, were teams that I thought could outperform this season, and I really liked what they had built and what they had. I just expected it to take a little more time, and I felt that we were lucky getting these teams in the early stretch of the season before they kind of got their feet under them. Well, that hasn't been the case, right? It was actually the exact opposite. These other teams that I expected to maybe start slower and advance quicker, they ended up being teams that got off to a quick start, right? So the beginning stretch of schedule hasn't been as easy as we predicted. And that truly is one of the reasons I think the Orioles have kind of not necessarily been 500. We've been a little above, but neither here or there, not excelling necessarily in the early seasons, because these teams are relatively tough. They're not the easiest teams to play, and they're harder to play early than I expected personally. However, I still believe we can get to that 24-12 record after the first 36. I still believe that's very within reach, and the Orioles, again, haven't blown it in the early stretch of the season. They haven't necessarily excelled and made a real push for that 24-12 start. But we'll see. Still a lot of baseball left, and they're playing some good baseball. Not everything, though, is good baseball, right? We've seen some good things. We've seen some bad things, and that's something we're going to touch on. We're not really going to touch on the games at all, gang. I'll run you through the 5 results, but truly, we are going to, again, take a step back from the individual games to not overreact, not freak out, and because of that, hopefully, get a better idea of the big picture ahead of us and kind of where this team stands. And again, we're going to touch on some of the good. We're going to touch on some of the bad. And there have been both. We're also going to talk about how this logjam and this embarrassment of riches that the Orioles have had, is it really a good thing or is it kind of a bad thing for this season? And moving forward for this franchise, it's a great thing to have and a blessing moving forward for this franchise in the years to come. But as for this season, I think that some could make the argument that this almost too talented Orioles roster, top to bottom, let's call it on the 40-man roster, and even extending past guys in the minors who aren't on the 40-man yet, how all of that talent sometimes can hinder you. And we'll talk about that, okay? I also want to talk about how, again, we just need to take a step back and really let this team sink in for a little bit. We need to let it shake out a little bit more before we make any rash decisions, before we make any crazy moves, not to overreact at the moment. And we'll talk about that. I do want to get out also an apology to Craig Kimbrel because this podcast hasn't necessarily been the nicest on him in the early days, even though we have also talked up him in some regards, and we'll get to all of that. We'll talk more about it. I'm going to dig in a little to the starting pitching staff and how they performed so far. So far, everybody except Cole Irvin has at least 3 starts under their belt. Corbin Burns having a 4th start under his belt. And Cole Irvin starting tonight. The game should be going off very shortly into this episode as far as me recording it. So by the time you're getting to it, the game should be done. Hopefully that will be a nice result, a good result. We're expecting very good things. Hopefully we can see the good Cole Irvin tonight and also the good Orioles offense, or at least one of the two. We'll figure it out, gang. We'll figure it out. We'll see how it plays out. I do have high expectations of them coming off of that last Milwaukee series and really the Boston series before that. Again, we'll touch on little things with those series as well. Obviously have to talk about Jackson Holliday. Last time we were on, it was before his first game. So we haven't been on since Jackson Holliday has taken a major league at bat, and certainly he's taken a handful of them already, at least a couple handfuls. And I want to kind of touch on him because we know it hasn't been the best start to a career we've ever seen. That certainly isn't a death sentence. That certainly isn't really cause of concern. And I'm going to touch on some of the good, the bad, and kind of where my head's at with all of that. Plus, at the end, I want to keep you up to date on the injury news regarding Kyle Bradish and John Means, and certainly those will take another level of importance after I talk about kind of the starting pitching thus far and where we stand at the moment as a team as a whole, right? So let's go back all the way to last Wednesday, gang, okay? All the way to last Wednesday. In the second game of the Boston set, the Orioles fall behind early, come all the way back to beat Boston 7-5 that night. And something about that Boston series especially that I do want to point out is the Orioles had a lot of things working against them during that whole series. We talked in that game 1 about how the Red Sox had that whole ceremony, the 20th anniversary of the World Series, plus also the Tim Wakefield remembrance. So a lot of emotion in that day 1. Day 2, the umps certainly were against the Orioles. There were a couple calls. I'm not going to dig too much into it, but I believe it was the 5th, maybe 6th inning of that game. I believe 5th inning. And in the top half, the Orioles had bases loaded and 2 outs, and Ryan O'Hearn basically drew a walk, but unfortunately ball 4, that was clearly ball 4, was ruled a strike. He ends up, I believe, grounding out on the play, ending the inning. Now, again, the Orioles came back. They won. That was a big day and really huge series for Colton Cowser, okay? And we know that Cowser is absolutely on a heater. Him and Westberg really showed tremendous things in that Boston series especially, but carrying over even to Milwaukee series, okay? So a lot of good things. And in the bottom half of that inning that we got the bad call on the one side, we had strike three that would have gotten us out of the inning get ruled a ball. And while that was a little more questionable than the ball that was called a strike, still, it was in the zone. It should have been a strike. It should have been strike three. Should have gotten him out of the inning. And then what resulted was more Boston runs to get them to 5-0 at the time. Again, Orioles winning 7-5 in that game. Phenomenal, phenomenal game. And talk about phenomenal games with a similar storyline. The Thursday night series finale in Boston, Orioles win 9-4, completing the sweep, getting out the brooms in Boston, which was so amazing to see. It's something we talked about going into the series as being a possibility and how important that game one was. And we see why, because when you win game one, you have a chance to get that sweep, especially, obviously, if you can come away with game two. That's what the Orioles did. It wound up being an extra innings game, and the Orioles dominated. So it was 3-3 headed into extras. Got there because of guys like Colton Cowser getting us there. Then, to lead off the extra innings, Gunnar Henderson goes Yahtzee. Colton Cowser gets his second home run of the night. I believe his first 2 home runs of his career came in that night. And just, again, we see these Orioles continuing to pile on runs, never being satisfied. In fact, in between those home runs, they even scratched and clawed with 2 outs to add an extra third run before that home run, right? So then Boston ends up putting one on the board also in the bottom of the 10th on a leadoff double, I believe, on the first pitch of the inning. Neither here or there, though. That's all Boston was able to get back. The game was completely out of hand at that point at 9-3 going into the bottom of the 10th. And the Orioles come away with that sweep in Boston. And everything's looking phenomenal. Everything's looking awesome, you know? And the Orioles had a lot of off days early in the season. And this really was part of the first stretch, I feel like, of tough games in a row, right? And I think we saw that going into Friday in that Milwaukee opener because it was just ugly, man. There was errors. There was a whole bunch of crap. The Orioles end up losing 11-1 against Milwaukee in that first game. Again, these guys didn't get back into their beds until 3-4 in the morning, I would assume, from what I've heard. And, you know, that's just tough on guys, man. That's not going to be easy to come back from that. That Thursday night game was a night game that instead of a normal day getaway game. So it made sense that the Orioles fall flat on that first game against Milwaukee. The problem is that carried into Saturday's second game, when the Orioles once again lost, this time 5-3. And the problem with that Saturday game is it wasn't exactly like Friday because the Orioles got up early and got up hot. And it looked like the Orioles were going to be able to kind of dominate that game. Then Milwaukee slugged their way back into it, tied it up. And even so, it looked like it was still just within reach. And then you blinked and it was 11-5 out of nowhere. The Orioles got demolished yet again. And it was looking bleak, honestly. It's one of those things where we haven't seen that much from the Orioles in the sense of losing those first 2 games. And we definitely haven't seen the Orioles getting swept at all in 96 series now. And it's 96 now because they took that last game, the final game on Sunday against Milwaukee. And it wasn't easy. It was back and forth, 1-0, 1-1, 2-1, 2-2, 3-2, 3-3. Like, it was back and forth until the Orioles were able to put up the first multi-run inning of any of these teams. And I think the only multi-run inning, if you look at the whole box score, and wind up winning that game 6-4. Again, not an easy win whatsoever, but important that they avoid that sweep because, again, they have, I believe, the 4th longest record in Major League history as far as 3+ game series of not getting swept. Now up to 96 games. Just phenomenal. Just absolutely phenomenal from this team because they don't quit. And that's going to be the next thing we talk about. But before I move on from these games a little, I do just want to say that it wasn't the prettiest 3-2 by any means. There was a lot of uncertainty. There are a lot of comeback wins. I believe the Orioles lead the majors now in comeback victories. But there also were some good things. Like, for instance, Sunday with Corbin Burnes being able to be the guy to stop that bleeding, which is what we talked so heavily about when we finally brought him in with that trade in the offseason. And it's what we said was one of the biggest factors to bringing in a guy like Corbin Burnes is when you need him to stop the bleeding, when you need a victory, he's going to go out there and give you everything he has to give you the best chance to stay in the game to eventually win it. And that's what we saw because they were able to chop at him here and there. And the Orioles could have gotten down on themselves. Heck, you see a lot of baseball teams just kind of throw in the towel on a game, on a series at a certain point and say, this isn't our day, this isn't our series, screw it. The Orioles never do that, gang. Okay? And again, we saw it time and time again from all different pieces of this team. And it was a phenomenal thing to see, even if it wasn't the prettiest baseball. And this is why I need to take a step back, right? Because after the 2 wins in Boston to get the sweep, I would have been on here over the moon, going crazy, saying that this Orioles team is back and we're going to go on a huge winning streak. And I was going to say that, right? Because I wasn't thinking logically about these guys are getting home super late and then having to play against a tough Milwaukee team with a chip on its shoulder, and certainly with 2 guys that the Orioles were on the Orioles last year, and knowing that the guy that people thought was the best person on the team is no longer there and now on the Orioles, just prove it's a mentality thing. So it makes sense that especially so early in the season, Milwaukee would play us very tough under not necessarily the best conditions, at least for day one, as far as the Orioles go with the travel. Okay, so it wasn't pretty, gang, but we ended up getting to a successful stint in those 5 games. And certainly if you include the first game in Boston, going 4-2 in those 6 games after losing the first 2 at home, I mean, you take the heck out of that. You really do, okay? So a lot of good stuff and a lot of optimism about this Orioles team right now. The thing is, it's not all good, right? But I want to start with the good. So the good I see in this Orioles team so far is really the first thing is what I just had harped on, which is this team does not quit, right? When we were down in those games in Boston, we don't quit. We keep grinding and we find a way. When we avoid the sweep on Sunday against Milwaukee, we keep finding a way and grinding. And even when Milwaukee seems to not go away and have our number, we do not give up on the game. The guys that are on the bench stay laser focused so that when they come in, they can help out and they can provide and they can assist in this. These guys are all in and nobody's taking a second off. Nobody's giving up on any of these games or any of these opportunities. The starting pitchers just battling, even though they might not have their best stuff, or they might not be getting the calls from the ump, or they might not be or they might not have the best control that day, whatever it may be. Maybe they made good pitches and they got dinged up for 3 in the second. They don't quit on that day. They don't quit on that game. And they just keep putting in great efforts. And that's why we've seen, especially these Orioles starters, rebound not off of bad starts, rebound off of a bad inning with 3, 4, 5 great innings afterwards, shut down innings afterwards. So while I'm going to get to some good and bads eventually about the starting pitching rotation, that's one of the great things that I see that this rotation especially is doing for these Orioles and keeping them in the game so often and more often than not, right? Now, I also love the good that I'm seeing in some of these young players, right? A lot of these young players. And really not only in them playing well, right? But taking ownership and taking a leadership role, taking charge of this team. It's phenomenal to see. And the number one guy I have to say I've seen this from is Colton Cowser. And it seems like he just has this different aura to him this year. And like this special sauce to him. And it seems like he's a leader on and off the field, in the clubhouse, with the guys, whether it's the younger players or even the veteran players, are now looking at a guy like Colton Cowser as a real leader on this team. And that's not to say that some of the more proven veteran leaders, such as a Cedric Mullins, isn't still a leader on this team and in this clubhouse. But it's phenomenal to see more young guys outside of an Adley Rutschman take that role. Because Adley just has that aura around him and naturally brings guys up. And while I think he is a leader and like absolutely brings harmony and winningness to this team and culture and just a way that can't be quantified, right? You can't put your hand necessarily on it because he seems a little quiet. He seems a little goofy sometimes. And like, that's not exactly who the leader is. Like, Cowser has been goofy and fun, but at the same time, I don't know. I don't see him being quiet. I don't see his... I feel more of this top tier leader, weirdly, than in Adley Rutschman. And that sounds insane, right? And personally, I still, even with believing that, still believe Adley Rutschman is more of a leader for this team because Adley has more responsibilities. Adley has more duties. Adley is hands-on with the pitching staff. Adley is working to be the best catcher in baseball. Adley is doing a phenomenal job hitting from both sides of the plate, even though he's had this cold stretch that he went through for a little bit, about 30 at-bats where Adley went cold. He's still done it at both sides of the plate. Like, he is that glue. Adley Rutschman is the glue, okay? That's the best way I think I can describe what I'm talking about. Adley's the glue, but it seems like a guy like Cowser is molding that glue or putting his sprinkles and glitter on that glue, okay? So maybe Adley is the glue that holds it all together. But we need guys stepping up, especially some of these younger players like Colton Cowser, like Jordan Westburg, and eventually Gunnar Henderson and Jackson Holliday, and some of these other guys that will eventually take that leadership step. A couple of them I feel like are more feeling it out, whereas Colton Cowser seems like last year's adversity and last year's failures have just propelled him to this like ultimate level, not just in his play, but in his whole personality and his whole vibe. It seems like Cowser has a real voice on this team. I believe Westburg is there as well, but maybe to a lesser degree. And I can wait for a Gunnar and a Jackson to become that because I want Gunnar to really get back to his MVP form, which I believe will happen until he maybe takes that leadership role and maybe more consistently for the, like, I can wait till next year for Gunnar to have a real voice, leadership voice in this clubhouse. I can wait a year or two for Jackson Holliday to have a real leadership voice in this clubhouse. I could have waited on Cowser also. In fact, I thought Westburg, I saw this more in Westburg coming into this year than I did with Cowser. But, by God, Colton Cowser, man, not only in the way that he's playing, but truly in just taking charge and taking on a leadership role naturally. And also being a fun guy that people enjoy to be around, because that's a part of it too. I don't need you to be a hard ass to be a leader. I need you to be fun. I need you to be one of the guys. And it seems like he is. We've heard multiple stories about him joking with this guy, joking with that guy. I know he was joking that he was so happy to get his first home run before Jackson Holliday because, God, he felt like if Jackson got a home run before he did, he was going to be so mad. And you know that's coming from a competitive, friendly atmosphere. But that's also real, gang. That's real. That's something that propels guys that extra step, that motivation, that competitiveness from inside the clubhouse is so important. And that's what this young core has. So that's one of the beautiful things that I've been seeing from these Orioles recently. And I really think the pitching is really there. That's the third thing that I'm going to harp on. And who I really want to give credit to are the coaches. And we know Chris Holt was this great pitching coach for us the past couple years. And he's moved on, still in the organization, still involved in our pitching, but now is like the director of pitching or something along those lines. So really has his hands on all of it, right? From the whole franchise down, which seems to be a great thing because we've seen him do wonders for guys like Yennier Cano, Felix Bautista, Dean Kramer, Kyle Bradish, Grayson Rodriguez. We've seen him help that. But also in new pitching coach Drew French, who at first, you don't know really anything about these guys. I mean, heck, I could read up on them. I could read great things about them. But you don't know until you start seeing it. And certainly he had, to get his feet under him. I remember when the season first started, day one or game two, he wasn't covering his mouth while talking to the pitchers on the mound. You see him do that now, right? Like, it's just natural. It's going to happen. You're going to learn. You're going to remember to do those things because I'm sure he did them in the past. I'm sure he's known about it in the past. I'm sure he was told plenty of times to do it in the past. But it's just one of those things you have to be reminded that you forgot in the moment to kind of remember moving forward. And as far as pitching coaches go, that's the least of my concerns, gang. It's getting the best out of these players. And really, I think we have seen him, Drew French, get his hands on these players and help mold them in all positive directions. Because even if some of these numbers, and we'll eventually get to them for the starting pitchers, aren't the most wow numbers you've ever seen, heck, some are not pretty early. That doesn't necessarily mean we haven't seen good things from these guys most of the time. And again, the number one thing I feel like the Orioles have improved upon is not letting games get away from you. Just because you have a bad inning or two doesn't mean you have to let it get away from you. And staying in those ball games, on games where we used to have to pull the starter because they just couldn't get an out. Like, at a certain point, the bad inning turned into an even worse inning. And then maybe they got out of that one, but the next inning started just as bad, and then you got to yank them. Whereas now, yeah, maybe they give up 3 and then 1. And those are in the first 3 innings. It's 4-0. Okay, well, guess what? This starter still gets through 5 1/3, 6 1/3, 7. Like, that's what you need to see from your starters consistently. And I feel like, especially working with not the best rotation that he possibly could have, because think about it, when he took the job, for all we know, he fully expected to have Bradish and Means in this rotation on day one. Maybe the Orioles and him knew that that wasn't the case. But maybe they did. Maybe they thought it was, right? So in that case, he's not even working with his best possible rotation. And still, they're showing great results. And still, he's showing why I think we got a winner in this pitching coach. And the combo, him and Chris Holt, Drew French and Chris Holt, I think is phenomenal. And we've also seen it in the bullpen. The bullpen, I feel like, has been very strong, again, to begin the season. Yeah, here and there, maybe somebody gets hit around. Certainly, a guy like Heasley at the bottom of the bullpen might get hit around in a tough game. But again, those were all games where it got away from you, or again, we got in way late from Boston and everyone's just beat up and tired from a long series, maybe a little overconfident naturally coming off of a sweep. Neither here or there. I think that we've seen great things from most of this bullpen. And speaking of not having the best bullpen out there, Cionel Perez has been hurt for almost this entire year, had 1 or 2 games before getting hurt. And he's been on the shelf for the last couple weeks. Now, we'd expect that maybe Cionel Perez gets back soon, but that's your number 2 lefty in the pen. So again, guys stepping up, guys playing well, and making sure that we don't miss necessarily the guys that are out too bad, which is sometimes all you can do. You can't necessarily replace the best with anything better. But hopefully it's just not that big of a downgrade, and you can manage and keep your team in ball games to have the offense come alive eventually and win games, which is what we saw them do in Boston, what we've seen them do a lot this season. Those innings 7 through 9, 6 through 9, the Orioles offense has maybe been the most potent in baseball up to this point through those innings. And I would have to look at that, but I can't see a team doing much better than the Orioles have 6+, 7+ through the game as far as the offense has been most this year. So that's one of the great things I've seen is just really that the pitching staff has been there and keeping us in games. The next thing that I've seen that we're doing well is that the vets are either playing well right off the bat or at least starting to get hot and starting to contribute like they did, right? And I felt like early in the season, maybe we weren't getting that from the overwhelming amount of veterans we have on this team. I believe both first basemen all season have shown me really the best out of any of the veterans on the team. Between Mountcastle and O'Hearn, even days they're both in the lineup, it seems like they're both hitting. It seems like they're both hitting home runs. It seems like they're both getting extra base hits. They're both driving in runs. They're both playing good defense. I've loved what we've seen out of first base, right, with those two veterans. But when you look at the other veterans, Cedric Mullins has been very hot the past 5, 6, 7 games. Let's say last week, Cedric Mullins has really heated up, which is a great thing because he started off a little slower. We've still yet to see Austin Hayes be able to break out of his monster slump. I'm not sure if he's gotten a hit since game 2 of the season, I think, but neither here or there. He's hit a lot of balls hard, right? He hasn't had many opportunities because of how good Cowser and now recently Mullins has been playing. And the fact that Santander is one of the big power threats in this lineup means that Austin Hayes really hasn't found the opportunity that probably he deserves, gang. Like, Austin Hayes was an all-star last year. Austin Hayes was a big contributor for this team the past couple years. And unfortunately for Austin Hayes, he's kind of getting left in the dust a little because at the end of the day, he just hasn't performed. And some of it's bad luck, truly. I feel like if he had been in this lineup every day getting through that struggle, heck, maybe even had twice as many at-bats almost at this point, he would have broken out of it. And maybe that cold streak would have looked a lot worse numerically, but at least he would have gotten out of it at this point, and it wouldn't be hanging over his head. Because Austin Hayes really hasn't obviously shown us much. Good in the field still, not showing me much offensively, and I'm not completely worried that he's gone and it's not coming back. I just worry how much opportunity is he going to have for this team to show it, and eventually, if you're not seeing it, what's the next logical move? I don't know, gang. I think that's a topic for maybe tomorrow. That's a topic for another day. Hopefully, just like Ramon Urias, he can kind of quiet me down a little and say, okay, let's give it a little more time. And I am saying give it more time with Austin Hayes. I just don't know how long that timeline is. And while Ramon Urias, whose head we were calling for all last week, I felt like, finally is starting to get some base knocks, get a hit here and there. I think he had a pinch hit opportunity last game and got on and got a hit. So, okay, Ramon Urias might be turning it on a little, which is nice. I'd prefer to have Ramon Urias on this team. I've said that this entire time. I'm just ultimately worried that Ramon Urias might take another slump, and then I think that's when the chopping block is there for him. But again, he's starting to turn it on, and I want him on this team because I think he's a nice piece to have ultimately on this roster. And you see it, good things from James McCann so far this season. You've seen good things, like I said, in the bullpen with Cano, Danny Colum. Yeah, and like I said, even Ramon Urias is starting to turn it on. Jorge Mateo has had a solid start to the year. Not the best defense at second base, like maybe I was hoping it would be better, but ultimately, he's been good enough with the bat also to make it good. And we saw it in that last game when Urias got his base hit. They pinch ran with Mateo instantly. Now, it didn't matter. Next batter, Mountcastle grounded into a double play, and nothing Mateo's speed or Urias' speed would have changed any of that. So, unfortunate for that, but we see that gamemanship and why those role players can be so useful and can be so successful. Because he pinch hit for Ryan O'Hearn, okay? So we had the lefty in facing the righty. O'Hearn had a good day, I believe. And then when they put in the lefty, you then go Urias, and Urias can get that base hit, and then we instantly can put Mateo out there as a runner. So that's cool. The last really good thing that I've been seeing and I've been enjoying is just feels like this vibe from last year and really that back half of the year before that, it's back. The vibe is back with these birds. And a part of that, truly, I feel like, is when they brought back the waterworks, when they brought back the Homer hose, when they brought back the faucet, when they brought back the sprinkler. I love it. I said I loved it. I was trying to get in on the handlebars. I'm not downplaying the handlebars, but this is just so much better. Finally, I feel like we saw the sprinklers, guys shooting sprinklers out of your mouth during an extra base last game. I don't know if the Orioles had busted that out yet since they brought back the Homer hose, but I love seeing it. The vibes are back. The gang has great vibes around it all. And I know that's stupid, but I talked in spring training about how they were building something special and the vibes of a championship caliber season. And really a pennant winning season, let's call it. Because what happens in the World Series, who knows? But getting to the World Series, I felt like that's what we were building this season, winning the AL pennant. And I still feel like those vibes are there. I talked about there was this whiff, kind of a bad stench that we got a whiff of for a little. And I think we even saw that in the Milwaukee series. I don't think that's fully gone. But I also believe even with that slight stench, the vibes are immaculate. And the vibes are awesome. There's just immaculate vibes on this Orioles team right now. Like, I know that it's crazy, but this is championship vibes for the Baltimore Orioles. And we're talking all over the board. The veterans, the rookies, the younger veterans in Henderson and Adley and Westberg and Kowser and the real veterans in Mullins and O'Hearn and Mountcastle and Santander and even Hayes. Like, the vibes are so strong, gang. These Orioles are on to something special. I still fully believe that 100%. And the waterworks coming back, the sprinklers, the Homer hose. It's a beautiful thing, gang. It's a beautiful thing for Birdland. And it's going to bring us big places because vibes are a lot of the game. Baseball's mental, man. And you get to this level, everybody's talented. They got here because they were really talented. At a certain point, the game is mental. And a part of that mental is your vibes with your team. And we've seen that. We've seen that. So, not to rain on the parade that I just was going on about, but a couple bad things I've seen so far, okay? And you're going to have that. Even the best teams are going to have some bad things that you're seeing. Nothing's ever perfect, right? So the first one that I think has been most important and most detrimental for the Orioles is that the defense seems a little off and off to a tough start. Now, I fully remember, I believe last year the defense got off to a really tough start. And then they turned it around and became a great defensive team. I still believe that's going to be the trajectory. And I believe that that is going to be the case for this season, right? That's the precedent that they set last season, that they can start off maybe a little shaky and still rise to above average to elite in defensive metrics, okay? But still, it's not great. At the same time, there are flashes of great, right? We've seen Henderson make multiple unbelievable plays. We've seen Mateo make great plays. We've seen Westberg make great plays. We've seen Cowser and Hayes and Mullins make great plays. Heck, we've even seen Santander and Mountcastle and Ahern make great plays. We know Adley makes great plays consistently. And now we've seen Jackson Holliday up, and I will get more to Jackson Holliday later, but as far as defensively has gone, especially the fact that he doesn't have much experience at this position, he's making some tough plays look easy. And there are certainly some mistakes we see from him and some of these other guys, and that'll get cleaned up. That'll absolutely get cleaned up as the season progresses, as guys like Holliday and Mateo get more time at second base. Because frankly, second base defense could probably, by metrics, be stronger if we had Ramon Urias out there, let's say. But offensively, obviously, that would probably not work in our favor. And frankly, even if you include speed in those metrics, I mean, Urias isn't going to get burned by both Mateo and Holliday. So the idea that speed kills and speed can get you to balls that Urias wouldn't get to, I mean, absolutely. Like we talked last episode about that play in the hole by, or maybe it was 2 episodes ago, that play in the hole by Mateo going from second over the shortstop side right after Gunnar Holliday went from the short to the second base side, making terrific play. So we see the flashes, and we see that it's going to come. And this is going to take me a little off topic real quick, but because when I first started this, and a couple times throughout this podcast, I've talked about how I personally believe I'm a huge jinx. And one of the reasons why I didn't start this last year is because I didn't want to jinx the Orioles, right? And I felt that this team was too good for me to be able to jinx in the big grand scheme, that this was just a really good baseball team that was going to win a lot of games no matter if I talked about them or not. However, there were going to be little small moments that you saw me being a jinx, right? And if you remember about the episode right before they brought up Holliday and sent down or cut Tony Kemp, Tony Kemp had an unbelievable play at second base going into foul territory and hauling down a ball that he probably shouldn't have made, but he made look easy because remember, he has experience in the corner outfield spots and stuff. Well, I talked about how I believe the guys on our roster will make those plays. Well, it's kind of ironic and kind of annoying and just shows me being a jinx that literally as soon as they bring Holliday up, in both of his first 2 games, there's a play out kind of in no man's land, again, around second base. This time, the ball in fair territory both times. And Holliday kind of looks a little lost for the first one. The second one, I think that truly that was the right fielder, Santander's ball. I mean, that thing was at Pesky's pole, and, like, Holliday was way out there. It's tough to say my second baseman should get that one, but he could have. So it's ironic that, like, there's been a couple of these instances where, sure, if Tony Kemp was my second baseman that day, he probably hauls in those balls. But again, offensively, he's not doing anything for me, so we need to expand. We need to bring up the better players, right? So, again, while the defense hasn't started great, errors-wise, they're on pace for more errors, at least, if not way more errors, than they have been the past couple years. I believe that'll kind of settle itself down, work itself out, and this team will get back to playing better baseball. In fact, perfect on the mark, right on time to talk while we're talking defense. Cedric Mullins just made an unbelievable catch in center field, hauling down a ball to end the first inning that would have driven in a run. Unbelievable diving catch to save a run. Cole Irvin appreciated it very much. I appreciated it. Took everything in me to not go nuts and ruined my thought of concentration on that last topic. And maybe that's why it got a little slow at one point, because my brain was trying to process all of it and not get too worked up about that amazing catch by Mullins. But right on cue as we were talking defense. Next one is really the struggles with Tyler Wells and Cole Irvin. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you they're completely unexpected. Certainly, if you know me and have listened to me, you know that I expected Tyler Wells to have a great start to the season like he did last year. So, yes, that to me personally is unexpected how so far he's not performed great. However, Cole Irvin, again, we heard the increased velocity, the better shape. We got a little on the hype train for Cole Irvin, just like we were already big on the hype train for Tyler Wells. And maybe we got a little ahead of ourselves when it comes to those two. Maybe those two aren't necessarily set for our major league roster as far as a starting rotation piece. And frankly, both of them right now are in the driver's seat for losing their jobs when John Means and Kyle Bradish come back in the next month and a half. I don't know. Still a lot of baseball left. And frankly, even those two, despite poor numbers that we will talk a little bit about soon, I still believe watching these games, seeing these starts, most of the time, like, they've had a pretty good start. And again, just one, maybe two bad innings, but still continuing to work through stuff. I remember, I think Tyler Wells' first start gave up a couple runs in the first 2 innings, maybe first 3 innings. And then he's got out 14 straight batters after giving up a couple runs to end his day. So that's just one of those things to me that, I mean, you know my affinity and love for Tyler Wells. So I'm not going to sit here and say he's cooked, because I still believe, worst case, he's an unbelievable bullpen arm for us this year. Truly. And I think Cole Irvin would be a nice bullpen piece too if Keegan Aiken starts losing his stuff. Because Keegan Aiken's looked pretty good so far, right? So once Cionel Perez comes back, Keegan Aiken moves more to that third lefty and long relief man. And while he's not a true long relief man, like Cole Irvin would be, I think that that's kind of the spot that would be up for grabs right there. And the Orioles would have to decide. Which one of these two lefties do we want in there? I think that's what we would say. And we'll talk more about the starting pitching because, again, I believe overall it's been very, very, very successful. Something that's been very, very inconsistent, unlike the starting pitching, which I believe has been pretty consistent over the course of the season so far, is the offense. And that has been so up and down and up and down, and putting up 11 runs and putting up 1 run and scoring a ton of runs late after barely hitting for the first 6 innings. And it's been very inconsistent and very annoying. And I'd say this is the number one main frustration in Birdland with the fans right now, is that these Baltimore Orioles are so inconsistent when it comes to hitting and can't seem to figure out how to consistently hit game after game after game or inning after inning. Like, it's driving me and these fans nuts to see them go 6 innings with 2 hits and then 2 innings with 9 hits and 6 runs. And even if that winds up winning us the ball game, it's beyond inconsistent so far. In fact, Colton Cowser and the 2 first basemen may be the only 2 consistent or 3 consistent hitters on this team so far this season. And again, it's early. I don't want to overreact. I don't want to lose my mind about it too much. This is one of the things I had to step back and take a breath, because I know Birdland is frustrated right now. I know teams are losing their mind right now, or people are losing their mind at this team right now. I don't want to overstate how annoying this inconsistency has been, but at the same time, I truly believe that things are starting to mesh in the right direction. And I'm really hoping this Minnesota series that just recently started is going to be the series that really ignites us fully, okay? I think that Boston sweep started the spark, and then it kind of got dampened in the Milwaukee series, but then it got a huge spark, I believe, at the end to come away and not get swept. We need to keep those good vibes rolling here. And frankly, Jordan Westberg has a huge opportunity that we can't let slip. We got bases loaded in the first inning. There was only one out. Cowser struck out, and now Westberg's down 0-2. We need to drive in guys in these spots. And Westberg and Cowser have been the guys that do it consistently. And frankly, Westberg just does it again. Westberg. All three? No, only two. Only two come in. 2 RBI double to start the game. Jordan Westberg and Colton Cowser are becoming those young leaders on this team, man. More of those young leaders. Seeing it time and time again, and I freaking love it. And I believe that they can put up even more. They got 2 men in scoring position still on. A base hit probably gets them both home. Woo! Let's go, gang. Let's go, Birds. Up 2-0 early on these Twins. Like I was saying, this is a series that if we can go and sweep these guys again, not sweep these guys again, but get a sweep again against the Minnesota Twins, who aren't easy. They're the reigning Central Division champs. But they're, again, one of those teams that I didn't love coming into this season. And I certainly didn't think was going to start hot. And they haven't. They're one of the ones that really haven't started hot. Not terrible, but not hot. So we got to take advantage. At least get 2 or 3. Again, you start with the 1. The only series the Orioles haven't won, game 1 of the series so far of this season, has been that Milwaukee season. And again, they didn't get to their beds till 3, 4 a.m. that day. I know, poor babies, but still, and frankly, I got the sense after sweeping Boston that was going to be a fun plane ride home, right? I believe it's probably only an hour and a half, 2 hours maybe. Probably 2 hours from Baltimore to Boston. I think it is a fun 2 hours for these Orioles players on that plane ride, and they enjoyed themselves after that sweep, as they should. As they should. So, maybe the last thing that I see bad is going to be our next topic, okay? So, let's get off of technically the all bad, because this has good and bad written on it, frankly. But our next topic is this log jam possibly a downfall for the Orioles this season? And what I mean by that is, we talked about this embarrassment of riches. Not only a stacked roster with veterans and young talent, and now a rookie or two, and a ton of players in AAA who probably should be in the majors right now. What could be the problem? What could be the downfall? What could be the problem with having too much talent? The problem is not picking the right talent on the team at the right time. And because of how, just contracts work and just how baseball works in general and anything works in general, right? We're not just going to be like, oh, well, let's get rid of this guy or send this guy who's been on the major league team for years down to the minors for another guy. We can't just do switch swap every other day. It's not just a taxi squad for everybody, right? You have a taxi squad for a few guys, mostly in the bullpen, to help out when guys throw too many innings one day. Listen, it is what it is, but the problem is that let's just look at a guy like Austin Hayes, right? Austin Hayes is a great example. There's a good chance that if Austin Hayes wasn't on this team, we'd get better production from the opportunities Austin Hayes had from a Kyle Stowers, let's say. Maybe not, but maybe. And let's run Anthony Santander. I love Tony Taters, and obviously he's one of the more scarier guys in our lineup, one of the big power hitters in our lineup, switch hitter, middle of the order. I love Tony Taters, but while he's had some home runs and he's had some good hits, he's batting just over 200, I believe, coming into the day. So it's one of these things. What if Heston Kjerstad was taking those at-bats instead? Maybe Heston Kjerstad is batting out of his mind right now. Maybe he's struggling like Jackson Holliday is. I don't know, right? Maybe instead of bringing up Holliday, if we brought up Norby would have had a lot more success early. But maybe Holliday is going to have a lot more success now that he's broken through and got himself a hit. Yeah, you never know, right? The unknown is unknown, right? You don't know about unless you give it a try. So the problem eventually is it a downfall? Probably not. It's a great thing moving forward for this franchise. It's a great thing in the years to come because we can fully maneuver this roster and create this roster exactly how we want. We have every opportunity to do that. The problem just becomes you never know what necessarily the right decision is. And sometimes you're going to wind up making the wrong decision, even if you don't know it. Even if a guy puts up nice numbers, another guy that you could have replaced him with could have put up better numbers. And you don't know. So is the log jam going to be a downfall? I don't think so. But I wouldn't be shocked if at the end of the year, moving forward, we wind up having this epiphany where it's like, it's time to kind of clear house of a lot of these especially veteran batters, because we have so much talent. I think we just hand over the reins. And we're not worried about leadership because we have Adley, and we have Colden, and we have Jordan, and we have Gunnar, and now we have Jackson, and we're going to have all these other guys, and they respect them, and they all respect each other, and they can listen to these, quote, veterans that might be their same age, hell, might be younger than them, but have been in the majors for longer and know how it goes. And you don't cut ties with all of them. And frankly, that just opens up a door to one of my favorite topics that I'm going to resist from really getting into right now, which is the Orioles eventually trading for Mike Trout. Because if you have this logjam and you need to ship some veterans that aren't way over prime and maybe are actually playing good baseball to make room, well, maybe you ship one more and you bring in a superstar like Mike Trout. It's possible. It's possible. Overall, like I was saying, we just need to let this team shake out, right? We need to let everything settle in and see how it all winds up working. We need to see if Hayes and Urias continue to struggle. We need to see if Holliday continues to struggle. I don't think he will, but we need to see him continue to succeed like he did in his 2 at-bats that he got an RBI and then got a single. So, we need to see this. We need to see Cowser continuing, maybe not this level of dominance, but continuing to be that star. We need to see Rutschman continuing to do what we know Rutschman will continue to do. We need to see Gunnar put aside a tough month or so to begin the season like he did last year and put up unbelievable numbers the rest of the way. Because we saw him do that last year. Saw him hit, I think, 180 in his first month. 213 in his second month, something like that. And then he tore it up the rest of the season and won AL Rookie of the Year. So understand, let things shake out, right? Let this rotation shake out. Let us figure out that rotation. Let us wait for these guys to get back healthy to see where it all shakes out. Because I think that's a good time to kind of see where it shook out or not, right? I think understanding that in, let's say, a month, we're going to have a much better idea about the whole landscape of everything, okay? And we're going to see if guys like Cole Irvin, who just gave up a solo home run to make it 2-1, can stick, not just in the rotation, but on this roster. So let things shake out, guys. Let things shake out. Like me, again, I need to take a step back. I need to take some time. I didn't want to overreact, and I'm telling you as Birdland, do not overreact so far. Let these games shake out. The team's 9-6 right now. Hopefully 10-6 by the time you're listening to this episode. Next one, and it's going to be short. It's going to be short. I don't have it written down. I don't have a huge thing to say, but I just want to kind of apologize to Craig Kimbrel and make amends with the Kimbrel camp, because I feel like maybe I've been a little harsh and maybe I've been a little too vocal about what the contingency plans are if he loses the job and how real the possibility is that he could lose the job. And certainly after the first blown save, even though we won the game, I was calling for it inexcusable and unbelievable, and this is why he's going to lose it. So I want to apologize, Craig Kimbrel. I want to say you've done a fantastic job so far. You know, that game you blew, it was on a bloop single that runner got on. Outside of that, you retired, I think, 14 straight batters after that. Since then, you have had an appearance where guys got on, but you got the save, shut it down on that Sunday to get us that win. So I want to apologize. I want to give you a fair shake, Craig. In fact, I saw you last year. I almost went up to say hi. You were at Cheesecake Factory with your family. I didn't want to bother you. I'm sure you're not going to see this, but neither here or there. I want to apologize to Craig Kimbrel and give you a fair chance. And I think Birdland, after booing him, after blowing that first save opportunity, should apologize to Craig Kimbrel too. And I think we need to stand behind Craig Kimbrel and believe that he can be this closer to get us through this year without Felix Bautista. Okay. Starting pitchers, I believe, have been very, very good. The numbers don't necessarily always show that. The first two starters between Corbin Burnes and Grayson Rodriguez is absolutely two top aces, elite top two, if not the elite top two starting duos in Major League Baseball. And I'll fight that tooth and nail. Maybe not that they are the number one, but they are absolutely up there in that upper echelon. Burnes, so far in 4 games start, he's 2-0, 2.28 ERA, 23 and 2/3 innings, 25 Ks, 4 walks, 18 hits, and 6 earned runs. Phenomenal stuff. Cy Young type stuff from Corbin Burnes. Now, Gray Rod, in 18 innings pitched, his 3 games started, 21 Ks, an ERA of 2.5. Very good stuff from Gray Rod also, guys. These are 2 elite starters in Major League Baseball. And just to go back real quick, something that I didn't mention about the pitching when I was so excited of it, when I was talking about the good I see in the pitching, especially in the starters, but really overall, starting bullpen, is the strikeout to walk ratio is fantastic for starters, for a bullpen. In fact, it might be the best in baseball right now. And that, again, goes back to Drew French and Chris Holt and how fantastic of a job they've done with this entire starting pitching rotation, bullpen, just every arm in this organization. So phenomenal stuff. Now, the problem with the starting pitching is when you look at those bottom 3, the Wells, the Irvins, and the Kramer. Okay? Kramer has actually put in mostly the best out of the 3, I believe. 3 games started, 16 and a third innings, ERA of 4.96, okay? Kind of inconsistent, though, at times, which we've seen from Dean Kramer at times. However, he did have at least one very nice game. He put up the first 7-inning start by an Oriole this season before Corbin Burnes tied it in the very next day. But we've seen him have those very good starts. We've also seen him get hit around maybe a little early, not have his best stuff, trying to figure out what pitches are working, and then figuring it out, sticking with it, and getting through a consistent amount of innings. And you see that as you see 16 and a third through 3 games, right? I mean, it's not elite, but it's at least getting you through 5 every single game. So not terrible from Dean Kramer. And right now, he's the favorite to keep that 3rd spot when the 2 starters, Bradish and Means, get back. And we'll touch on those in a little bit. Cole Irvin, who's starting tonight and has already given up a home run in 2 innings, or a home run over 2 innings. So not terrible so far, only a solo shot. Still, hasn't had the best, right? It is 2 games, 10 innings pitched. Okay, 5 innings in each. ERA of 8.1. That's not going to cut it. It's not going to cut it. And hopefully he can put in a nice start the rest of tonight, get that ERA down some, and continue to chop at it. Because again, I don't need you to have this killer 2.28 ERA like Corbin Burnes. But I can't have you living in the 8s either, Cole. And Tyler Wells, my guy, over 3 starts, has 15 and a third. So again, just over 5 innings, or 5 innings plus a third of an out. Okay. Over the 3 games. ERA of 5.87, not as bad as Cole Irvin in his first 2 starts, but also not great either. The 3 of them are a combined 0-4 as far as records go. So Cole Irvin hoping to get the first win of those 3 this season. So we'll see how that shakes out. I still think, again, we need to let it shake out. We need to see how it all plays out before making any decisions. But it isn't great. And frankly, it might scream to me postseason or trade deadline move. Now, I don't necessarily think that is fully the case, because once you bring back Bradish, assuming he's healthy and pitching like he was, that's essentially a third ace in the rotation. And when you bring back John Means, assuming he can get back near where he was, that might not put him up there in ace territory like the other 3, but that will at least make him a middle starter, an average starter in the majors, right? So we'll see what happens with that. See what happens with those guys. Jackson Holliday just smoked the ball in the gap. Tracked down and caught. Thought for a second he might be going Yahtzee. Tried to get it into the bullpen area at Camden Yards, but just came up a little short. A lot of good things coming from Jackson Holliday, and that's really our next topic. So right on cue again. So we know he started off 0 for 13 on his season. Now, one of those got him an RBI, so he did have a productive at-bat as he drove in a run. I think it was second and third, nobody out when he came up, and he grounded it to second base, got the RBI, which was big in that game. But what was even more big is him finally getting his first hit on Sunday. And not only that, we saw the first to third on a ball that most guys would not even try, let alone be able to succeed at. He had a nice, nifty little slide. It kind of reminded me of a Trey Turner slide, how just smooth and automatic and staying on the bag it was. And that was great. And then he winds up coming around to score. So you see some good, you see some bad. And I think we have a lot of good stuff still coming. The best thing, I think, is seeing the joy and confidence he has now after that first hit, right? I think early on when we saw him especially come up, but then start struggling and not getting these hits, he was trying to be very overly serious. You know, he was raised in a clubhouse, so he knows it's not a joke. He obviously wants to succeed. This is his job. This is what he's planning on doing for the next 20 years of the man's life, and has spent his whole life working up to for 20 years. So he takes it very seriously. So you can tell that it was killing him. And as soon as he got off the schneid, as soon as he got that hit and then made his way first to third, you saw the smile, you saw the smirk, you saw him enjoy it. And then frankly, I think right after, immediately after, you saw him just smiling and enjoying himself on that field again, and a confidence in his eyes that wasn't there before. And that last ball that got tracked down, maybe he was a little under it, but smoked and easily could have gone out. I don't know how the wind is today at Camden Yards. Might have been tough. But as far as offense goes, we know obviously he struggled. He looked a little overmatched. It was ironic that he got his hit off of the first guy that he saw throw 100 at him. Guys were joking, I guess he just needed to see 100 in order to get a hit. Well, hopefully that's the case, because a lot of guys throw 100. So that would be a good thing. Either way, at defense, we see him make good plays. We talked about this earlier. Make very tough plays. Nice sliding play. He had a great tag the other day on an attempted steal. We also see some tough stuff and things that he doesn't have the best experience with, whether it's tracking those balls in the no man's land in right field. We saw twice in Boston him come up short there. We saw him have this play where Rushman threw a pickoff or threw the ball to try and get the guy out at second, not the one where he tagged the guy, a different one. And there was a man at third who walked home. So it was just one of these things where I don't know if that's on Holliday and maybe he missed the sign that he was supposed to cut that off quick. I don't know. I don't think Holliday really had much of a shot to get him unless he really comes up for the ball, which means the guy probably doesn't go, frankly. But again, these are all growing pains. He hasn't played much at second base. And we've seen him have some nice plays out there, truly. There was one inning in Boston where it felt like he got a tough hop up in him, kind of snagged it barehand, threw it. He, like I said, made this nice sliding catch or stop before throwing the guy out. Like, he's had some nice plays, and we're going to see that athleticism play. And hopefully, the more comfortable he gets, the better we see. And I believe that to be the case. I think he has an unbelievable second baseman profile. I think Gunnar Henderson really is going to lock down shortstop for a while, and a part of that is because Westberg and Mayo are either in the majors playing third or waiting in the weeds to come in and play third, and there really isn't a spot else to put Gunnar other than short or third, as long as, who knows? Who knows what the future is possible? One of these guys might wind up having to learn corner outfield. Don't be shocked when that happens. Don't be shocked when eventually Connor Norby comes up and starts playing a lot more corner outfield than maybe infield, just because that's where the playing time is. So we'll see. I also want to say this about Jackson Holliday, and I didn't fully research this, but having followed all Oriole prospects so heavily like I do, but certainly Jackson Holliday was a different level of that. I fully believe that at least at the last couple levels of the minors, AA, AAA, he started off slow. He had at least 1, 2, 3 plus games before he looked comfortable. So I could expand that and be like, okay, let's say, because I want to say it's happened almost at every level, right? So let's say at A-ball took him 1 game to kind of get comfortable. AA 2, AAA 3 or 4. Okay, well, now guess what? In the majors, it's going to be 6, 7, 10. So give him a week or two. I think Jackson Holliday starts putting up unbelievable numbers, blazing through the major league pitching, and is really going to learn and adjust. And already you can see his batter's eye becoming better, him taking closer pitches, him not swinging at balls as much with 2 strikes on him, which he's had a lot. And frankly, major league pitchers have been not hitting the strike zone a lot, probably on purpose mostly, to get him to try and chase. A guy that's over anxious, a guy wanting to do too much, a guy needing that first hit, especially before he got one. Overextending, swinging at balls you probably shouldn't, trying to think this is going to be here when you know it probably won't. It happens. Give him more time, give him more experience, and I believe you see Colton Cowser really taking him under his wing. It seems like they're walking in. I don't know if they're rooming together. I don't know if even Jackson's maybe living at Colton's spot, possibly. I'd expect Jackson to be able to get his own spot, but you never know how these guys have their things set up. It's not uncommon for these guys, even that can afford their own spot, to room with one of the other guys on the team. And it seems like they're coming into the stadium together, the ballpark together. I know they visited the Green Monster together when they were in Fenway. Kind of seems like he's taking them under his wing because it's like, hey, I faced a lot of adversity last year, and look how great I'm doing now. Wasn't that much time, wasn't that many plate appearances since Colton Cowser has been struggling from last year. So he's taking Jackson under his wing and going, listen, just enjoy yourself, relax, keeping Jackson loose, keeping him laughing, keeping him enjoying himself, and keeping that joy there. And I think we have a lot of great things to see from Jackson Holliday moving forward. All right, gang, so I'm going to wrap this up basically talking about Kyle Bradish and John Means and updating you a little on their injuries. There isn't insane updates, but again, a lot of times no news is good news when these rehab starts are are being talked about. So Kyle Bradish was supposed to have his first rehab start in high A ball, Aberdeen, on April 11th. That actually got scratched because of inclement weather. So he ended up throwing a bullpen on the 13th and is supposed to have a rehab start in Double-A sometime this week. So very exciting stuff. It'll probably be a month till he's through his rehab starts because he's looking at this as his spring training. So you got to think that might even be 6 weeks. A lot of times I feel like these pitchers need 6 weeks to really extend themselves. I'm not sure if, let's just say that started a week ago, okay? Last week when he threw. So let's say 5 weeks from now, 6 weeks from now, we're getting Kyle Bradish, assuming everything stays positive. And everything's been positive to this point, including coming off of the bullpen session on the 11th and being like, all right, not only are you going to have the rehab start, but now instead of high A ball, it's going to be in Double-A. All right. John Means, already 3 rehab starts in. We know his first one didn't go well. His second one was pretty successful. This one was solid, not unbelievably great by any means, but certainly, I would say successful. Again, assuming that they're just working on mechanics and getting back to throwing against live players in an actual game. I'll take 3 innings pitched, 2 hits, 2 walks, 3 Ks, and 2 earned for John Means in his 3rd rehab start. Solid. And it looks like John Means is going to be able to come up, and I would expect to be pretty solid. Again, at least an average middle of the rotation starter in Major League Baseball. And when you put him behind Corbin Burnes, Grayson Rodriguez, and hopefully soon after he comes up, Kyle Bradish is back. I mean, hell, that's a hell of a 1 through 4. Hell of a 1 through 4. And we'll see who remains in that 5 hole. And maybe the Orioles decide later in the season they need to make a move to get a better 5th starter. I don't think that's the case. I think a Dean Kramer could be more than fine as a 5th starter for a very, very, very good Major League Baseball team this season. And I think we've seen that. And even if it's a little inconsistent, hopefully he can continue to excel and put up good numbers like we've seen him do. Because I'm getting them all confused now, but we've seen Dean Kramer put up very solid numbers over the course of multiple starts. I would expect him to kind of get in his zone and be able to hold on to that last spot. But again, you know I absolutely love Tyler Wells, and I could see Tyler Wells getting back on track. And who knows, maybe Cole Irvin decides to put it together. I don't know. Either way, I absolutely love it. Also, and I'll just throw this tidbit out there at the very end, there's a chance also, if we need that 5th starter, the O's go, you know what? Cade Povich, Chase McDermott, get on up. Seth Johnson, get on up. One of you kids. I mean, Cade Povich is looking amazing so far in the minors, and we know he had a great spring. It could be time. And we say, hey, let's get Cade Povich some real experience as a number 5 starter before we need him to be consistently good. If we're not getting that consistently good starts from Kremer or Irvin or Wells, screw it. Why trade for someone? Let's give our star prospect now, pitching prospect, the 5th spot and see how he reacts. And if he falters, guess what? We can give McDermott the chance then after him. Just like after Cowser failed last year, we gave Heston the chance. And there's one more thing on a side note, okay? I'm done with the injuries. On a side note, there's one more thing I need to talk about, and this goes back to how the vibes are immaculate, okay? This is going to be a good thing to end on. And I absolutely freaking love the Cowser and Cow puns going on. Because of how good Colton Cowser has been, I love the cow costumes. I love all of it, man. In fact, I have a cow costume. I should have worn it this episode. Maybe tomorrow, gang. Maybe tomorrow I'll pop in on a cow outfit. And either way, I can't wait to get to Camden Yards in that cow suit. I've already told people, next time I go to the yard, I'm going to have that cow outfit on because I'm loving Colton Cowser. And I love how Birdland's loving Colton Cowser right now. And I love when he comes up with the moves. Phenomenal stuff, gang. Phenomenal stuff. Also, Ryan O'Hearn just hit a home run. 3-1 Orioles. Exciting stuff, gang. Exciting stuff in Birdland. So with that, we're going to put a wrap on this episode. Talked about some really good things. Kind of glossed over the games and got more to the meat and potatoes today. Didn't want to talk box scores with you, gang, today after a few days off. But fully expect multiple episodes coming more out this week. Probably tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, heck, maybe every day this week. Because we back in it, gang. And the season is rolling. These Orioles are going, and hopefully they can get their 10th win today. So with that being said, gang, this was another episode of the Talkin Orioles Baseball Podcast. Let's go, O's!